Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel if you're returning. If you're new here, my name is Tori, and today we are going to be experiencing Saturday Shenanigans. And this is just going to be like an impromptu series that I don't really schedule out or anything, of just like video clips that I wanted to share, but they don't feel like they fit anywhere else. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. It's like my etc. Area, I guess, of this channel, but I wanted to do a video because I was asked by some of you all who are interested in how I read, what I read, and all things reading, because I am a children's and teen librarian, and I just kind of want to like review what I've read this year already, and my takes on it, that kind of thing. So that's what we're going to do here, but it also has like other clips in it too. So we'll just go in and out and it'll be fine. It'll be great. And so I do want to say before I get started talking about everything, that I am going to go over every single book. And while I was thinking about how I would approach this, and I said it in a video before, is that like I don't like speaking negatively about things because I don't think it serves any purpose. But I am going to go through every book that I've read this year, and I didn't really enjoy every book that I've read so far. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I am going to explain why it didn't appeal to me. And that's not a judgment on anyone else's reading style, or if you enjoyed the book, I am very delighted for you. So let's get into it. Okay, I thought the best way to tackle this would be to share just an overview of every book that I've read this year. I will put my Goodreads profile down in the description box if you want to be friends. I'd be happy to share that space with you all and see what you're reading as well. I kind of read a mixture of everything. I don't have a preference, really. I enjoy the act of reading and every aspect of every genre for the most part. I would say that the things that I don't read like very frequently are probably sci-fi and nonfiction with a specific lens on health, because I don't like discussions about like body and anatomy and stuff. It just grosses me out. So I'd say those are like the least two spots that I read. So and as far as like how I read or what I read, I do prefer print, but I have really leaned into audiobooks this year because they have really helped me get through some of these books while I am busy shelving and driving and all the other things that I'm having to do that I can't pick up a print copy and just read it while I'm doing whatever I'm doing. So if anybody ever tries to tell you audiobooks are not reading, they're wrong, because there is scientific studies that are on the interwebs that prove that it lights up the same bits of your noodle as it does when you're reading regular print. So if you really want to try to pull out receipts on somebody about that, you can go look up those studies, but it is reading. And so a lot of these have been audiobooks, and I've really embraced that this year to help me get through my goals, because forever I really just wanted the print experience, but I just never had time. So anyways, this has just been a year for me of like, I feel like I'm not reaching a middle ground really. It's a hit or a miss. And I feel like that's something I don't really experience very often. So, because generally every book I read, I'm like, that was really enjoyable. There are parts that I liked, and then there were parts that I had questions about. But for the most part, I'm able to enjoy most of what I read. But this year has been very interesting in that it's like, that was enjoyable. I enjoyed it. I loved it. Or like the other end is like, I just didn't click. It didn't work for me. And there's not really like, I don't know. It's just, it's weird. It's a weird reading year for me. And I also have like this really inner conflict of like, at my heart and soul, I am a mood reader, but I am also not a mood reader, in that like I'm a mood reader, but I force myself to read outside my mood, and that never hurts me. But I feel like if I were just to let it go and stop worrying about what I think I'm supposed to be reading, that would be better. But I never can fully step out of that mindset of like, oh, I should read this because of these XYZ reasons. So there are some times where I'm just like, oh, I want to read this, and I choose a book because there's always an extenuating like circumstance. Like every book that I choose to read, it's not because I just randomly pick it up. And I think if I did do that, I'd probably be more, I don't know, I'd probably have more joy in my reading experience or something. So I know that this clip is going on for a long time, but I really wanted to give you a really good overview of everything that I've read in the titles and what I try to incorporate. So I have some graphic novels here. I have a manga title. I have a play. I have juvenile fiction. I have YA fiction. I have adult. I'm heavy on the mysteries because I am first and foremost a mystery lover. I love me some mysteries. Back in the day, Christopher Pike was my boy. So I'm always just going to go for that first. But I mean, like, I started out the year strong, right? Like I've pretty much announced my love for Sunyi Dean's The Book Eaters. That book is amazing. It is so action-packed. It's like this fantastic story about this woman. She's a book eater, and it's like a specific species of beings who literally eat books for a living and to survive. And we're about to transition now, sorry, in the middle of all this, to me showing you my new bag that I purchased. I love this thing. I will put the link down in the description box below, but it is like the perfect amount of space. I can throw in a huge book, I can throw in my planner, and put all my cute little pins on it. And I like that if it gets like fuzzy, I can take care of that as well with a lint roller. But anyways, so The Book Eaters is what we were talking about. I loved the concept because at the end of this audiobook, the author talked about how it was a response to someone's comment on like a Reddit thread of that the vampire genre is played out and that there's not really anything else you can do with it. And so this was kind of like her response to that. And going back to the bag, you'll see that I keep specific things in little bags. So it's like my big bag of little bags. That's how I've always carried my purse. It just makes sense to me. I don't like things falling everywhere in my bag. It follows Devin, and she is a female book eater, and like female book eaters in that species are dying out because they keep giving birth to more males than females, obviously. And so she's grown up with the messaging that she's a princess and that she is really valued, and anything she wants, she can have it because she's so rare, right? Well, then she grows up and she begins, fulfilling her role as a female book eater. And that means in their society that they're supposed to marry, have a child, and then move on to their next marriage because they're trying to keep the book eater species alive. And Devin struggles with that practice and that tradition because she sees her children for her actual children, whereas other book eater like tradition just says like you're to create the child, you're to wean the child, you're to move on from the child. It's not to you're not to connect with the child beyond that, and she does. And so that's like the crux of her whole conflict throughout this book, is that she connects with her children like a true mother. So that becomes a very large problem in the society in which she lives, and it leads to a lot of just inner family violence and conflict because all of the book eaters are somehow related. because they're all from one species. I just really liked this book. I liked that it was set in like an urban England, and it's not so much world building as it was lore building, and like talking about what it meant for her to go against book eater tradition. So 10 out of 10. I love that book. Okay, so the second book I read was The Secret History, and this took me a minute. And normally, like, if I'm going to read, it's either going to be an audiobook that I read over a couple of days. And lately, if it's a print book, I have to, like, I'm either stringing it along for, like, weeks at a time, and then I sit down and binge it the rest of it all at once. Or I binge it all at once. Like, there's no in between. And that's the struggle for me right now, is that I read a book and it's like I've sat with this book for 4 weeks and then I just finish it all in one day, or I finish it all in one day and like I go to the next book and I'm back at that. It's not working. I'm reading it forever and then I'm binging it. I don't know what's going on. But The Secret History was in the second category of I was reading it for weeks and weeks and getting like 2 pages in, and then I binged it all at once. So now that we have transitioned to another clip, this is me updating my bibliophile reading journal that I purchased. I purchased this at like Barnes & Noble, and I had like 2 more entries to go because I purchased this back in 2023, and I was just trying to finish this up. I have filled out the whole thing. So really at the beginning of this year was trying to finish out the titles that I'd already planned to read to finish this reading journal, if that makes sense. So I read The Secret History because it's got like a cult following. Donna Tartt is a Mississippi author. So, I'm trying to read more authors like who are from this area. And it wasn't like, I think for me, in dark academia spaces, I want to read more of a female point of view, and they're so oftentimes from a male point of view. And I don't know. I'm just not with the men's right now about that. Like, I don't want to read through a dude's point of view half the time. It just makes me like, I'm already like, if I'm reading from a dude's point of view, I'm already annoyed, and there's no reason to be. I don't know what it is right now. I don't know if it's just like some inner soul work I need to be doing, but I just don't care. I don't care. And so that's a struggle, and we got to work on our empathy, but it's not that deep sometimes too. So, so The Secret History is this story about a group of friends at college. And it's from the point of view of one of the friends who comes to the college, and he's kind of an outsider at first. He gets invited into this group of friends, and it's kind of like a story about your perception of people and your idea of them and how you see them versus how they truly are and their true character, I would say, is the crux of this one. And if you haven't read The Secret History, it is very much like there are very atmospheric passages about the weather, and I think it's in Vermont or something, but like the leaves are, being squished down into bedding and then there's like blooming apple. It's like very, you want to read it in fall and winter type vibes. And I was like, okay, but it didn't click with me until I started reading journaling. That's not a thing. I started like writing about it in my A6 reading journal that you'll see later on. Because I was like, okay, cool. This is like a rich people problems story, which, I actually end up reading a lot of rich people problems, ironically. But I was just like, whatever, it's fine. And then when I started writing about it in my reading journal is when I was like, okay, there's a lot more here that I'm not paying attention to because I'm only looking at it from the surface level. So that was kind of how I learned to appreciate the secret history a little bit more, because there is a lot of nuance behind the characters and who they stand for. And like the Greek, or I don't know, is it Greek or Roman? The Latin concepts of ethos, logos, and how they play throughout that novel. And so the next couple of books that I read were just so that, well, like The Earth Dragon Awakes, that is a juvenile book that I had because a lot of the times I will read books that aren't circulating on my shelves, but I personally would, like, I find the book interesting to read. So that was one of these. And it's like a historical fiction novel about earthquakes on the West Coast in the early 1900s. And it's by Lawrence Yep. And so, like, it was interesting, but, you know, it wasn't anything that I want to go on and on about, I guess. So then the next one I read is Tennessee Williams' The Rose Tattoo. Like, one of my book challenge things was to read a book and then watch the adaptation. And I actually did it with this because it was turned into a movie in the 60s. And so this was really interesting because I somehow have Tennessee Williams amnesia and forgetting how controversial he was for his time. Like, he was not afraid to talk about sex. He was not afraid to talk about women's roles, men's roles, and Tennessee Williams and his mother didn't really get along, so he has a lot of, like, toxic female characters in his plays, and it's like, it's so juicy, y'all. Like, I always forget how juicy the content can be for Tennessee Williams. Like, it always throws me because I'm just not thinking that some dude from the 60s is going to be serving up the tea. But when I tell you, I was enraptured with this play because it was just like, what is going on? It's this mother who is deeply in love with her husband, and she mourns his death because he passes away in some kind of accident, and that becomes her personality. Like, she puts her whole identity into her husband, and when he's gone, now her whole identity is to be a widow. And it's really toxic, and things evolved to her finding out that she did not have a husband who was faithful to her, and that, like, disrupts her identity even further because she's like, that's not possible. And then she goes on to, like, have an affair. It's like, there's so much there, and I really could talk for an hour or two about all of the different things in this play, but I was just so wonderfully delighted by it. So definitely, I'm always, like, I try to read a Tennessee Williams play once a year at least, because Tennessee Williams is from Mississippi. He's from the town in which I work out of. So, like, he was born in that town, and I try to know what we're talking about when we're talking about Tennessee Williams. And so I always try to read a play. And then, so after that, I read A Botanist's Guide to Parties and Poisons, and then I followed that up with the second one in that series, A Botanist's Guide to Flowers and Fatality. Like, it's like cozy mystery of this woman named Saffron, and she works in a botany department in a university, and the first story follows her after her mentor is kind of framed for the poisoning of another professor's wife in their department. And then the second one is her following the police department efforts to investigate a set of murders using poison flowers. So then we have Unstable Masks. That was a book I was commonplacing about, and it's whiteness in American superhero comics. And that one, again, a really great nonfiction essay collection about how whiteness pervades superhero comics and what it means to consume them. And I could talk about that forever, but I won't. And in this clip right here, I actually am organizing some Pokemon cards for my nephew because he wanted more of them, and I have a bunch that I'm not ever going to use. So I went ahead and pulled those out because I was going to go to see him over that weekend, and so I wanted to make sure that I had everything I needed for him because he was constantly calling me and being like, hey, is this coming? Are we going to do this? he's very into Pokemon cards right now. And so it's really sweet to see it from a different side, where I grew up with Pokemon cards. Like, that was something that was a part of my childhood from as far back as I can remember. And to see somebody else who's like a kid now be really into it, it's just really heartwarming. And it's also like funny because he's interested in the most random parts of the Pokemon cards. I don't understand the logic that his generation is coming to them with, but we're not here to judge. We're here to just encourage these wholesome interests. But if I were to really get down to it, I'd be like, none of this makes sense. What are you doing? But it's fine. It's fine. It's because, like, I'm not, a 5-year-old, so it's fine. And then the next book is Nothing More to Tell, which I'm also going to kind of lump in with Within These Wicked Walls, House of Hollow, Blackwater, 10 Pins, Apple Black, and I think that might be all of the YA. I'm probably missing something, but these were YA mysteries and graphic novels, manga that I read. Honestly, my favorite out of the group was Within These Wicked Walls by Lauren Blackwood. It was a Jane Eyre retelling, but like a lot spookier, and it was really good. Then there's some cozy mysteries, so Dead Dead Girls by Nakisa Afia, and then A Cup of Holiday Fear and The Retreat are both books in different mystery series that I like to follow. I read Wreck the Halls. That one was really corny, guys. I'm sorry. And then I read A Woman Is No Man by Itaf Room, and that one was phenomenally heartbreaking. I adore that book. There was so much there about the love of reading and the power of reading to free us, and just feminine roles within a Palestinian family, and what it looks like when tradition is valued over everything else. And it hurts so good. And then there was Where the Body Was. That was an okay graphic novel. The Midnight Library, I had marked it to be read at the height of its popularity, but it didn't fit for me. I was honestly glad that I had waited to read it. But going back to some of the titles I skipped over, so I also read Assistant to the Villain, and that one was goofy, and I ended up finding it pretty entertaining. I did have some kind of hang-ups on it, but I liked it overall. And then I also read Ana Maria and the Fox by Liana de la Rosa, and that one was like a Bridgerton comp to me. It was okay. I have some questions about like the introduction of the sex parts of the book. Just didn't feel like they fit, so I was a little annoyed at that, but I'm going to go back and read like the second in the series, so I'm going to continue with that one. But jumping back to where I was, I also read Dead 11 by Jimmy Giuliano. That one had some plot holes. It was good because it was like a multimedia type of audiobook, so that was like a theatrical experience, and I do recommend it on audio, but I feel like this book is also one you would need to read along with the audiobook. And for the amount of unanswered questions at the end and the stuff that doesn't make sense with it, I just don't. I mean, it's okay, but it's not anything great. But then I also read That Pinson Girl by Jerry Wilson. And this one is set during one of the world wars, and it's about a girl who ends up getting pregnant out of wedlock. And it's a big scandal, but she won't tell anybody who the baby's father is. And there's a lot here about race relations in the South at that time, and just misogyny and class. There's so much here, and I can't even really form the words about how I feel about it. It just really impacted me, and I still think about it, and I still sit with it, because it felt like things were just happening to the characters that were out of their control because of the society in which they lived. And I feel like that it captured the sense of hopelessness you can feel when it feels like you have no control and you are not the prioritized group of society. So I really, really appreciated this one, and I liked that it was like by an author local to me that I could read, and it was giving like, kind of like, it felt like an earlier fried green tomatoes, if you will, but like not, if that makes any sense. But I just liked how it covered how like secrets within society, within one's family, can really just break things down. And the main character felt pretty passive to me, but where that normally bothers me, it didn't for this one, because it was like, what can she do? She's a woman in like the early 1900s. She can't really do anything. So it felt realistic, and I don't know, I just really, really liked this one, and I still can't put my finger on quite why. But one of my favorite books that I've read so far this year was the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, and I actually had it to be read in my bibliophile journal that I was filling out earlier, and I hadn't gotten to it, and then I saw that Cindy Guntert Baldo was reading it from her library, and I was like, dude, I gotta get on that, because if Cindy liked it, I feel like it's pretty good. And so I finally read it, and this was like, oh my gosh, it was what I want Steel Magnolias to be. Like, if they did a remix of Steel Magnolias, but with vampires, and like, it's just a perfect look at like how female friendships can get so nuanced when you're in the more complicated parts of life and you're trying to balance a marriage, your children, your in-laws, and society's expectations of what you should be doing, and how other families and their and how other couples perceive you as a female and you as a couple and your couple. There was just so much here, and I loved this book. It was fantastic to me. And then after that, I listened to Never Saw Me Coming by Vera Kurian on audio, and it follows this college student who chose the college in Washington, D.C. that she attends because she wants to murder somebody. And so the premise is that she got a full ride to this college because she enrolled in a clinical study for diagnosed psychopaths. And when I tell you, I was just like, my mouth was open half the time, because I don't know what like a psychopath thinks like, but the way that this character was written was just like, it felt like I was like, the half the time I was listening to this book, I was like, no, she's not going to do that. And then she does it, and you're just like, okay, she did that. Now what's going to happen? It's like, and normally I feel like when we say it's like watching a train wreck that we can't look away, it's not necessarily always a good connotation, but this one just had me like on the edge of my seat trying to figure out what was going to happen next, because she's a psychopath, like clinically diagnosed, and she thinks of things very differently, and she ends up realizing that the other students in the clinical study that she's involved in are getting murdered. So she's trying to murder somebody, and I mean, it feels like one of those books that kind of makes you do a double take on your own biases towards mental illness, or towards mental diagnoses that like we consider stigmatized, because she wants to murder a dude for sexually assaulting her at a very young age, which I'm not saying it's right, but I'm not saying I don't understand it, you know? Like, I'm not saying it's right, but also I really enjoyed this one because it made me, like, I was putting myself in their positions, and I was like, what would I do here? And I really liked that it made me think. I wouldn't do half the things that they did, but it was just really interesting, and I wanted to see how it ended, and it was just fascinating. I really enjoyed this one. So for the book after that, I read The Perfect Marriage on audio, and I did not enjoy it. Found the characters very unlikable, and I understand that that was most likely the point, but there was never a point for me where it was like, okay, I like that they're unlikable because of X, Y, and Z. It was just they stayed unlikable. So, yeah. The next one that I read was Help for the Haunted by John Searles. And this was probably the first book I have picked off of my Goodreads TBR list. Like, intentionally going to my Goodreads TBR and being like, let me choose a book that I've already marked as something I want to read. And I went back to, like, the earliest books on my TBR list and chose this one. And it was, I think I really like the audiobook narrator. She narrated a book last year that I really liked, and I just like her voice, but also the character was really, I feel like I really related to her, because she's the youngest in a family where people keep things from her, and growing up, a lot of stuff was kept from me as the youngest in my family, and so she goes through this journey of like realizing who the people in her family are versus who they've curated their image for her to be, if that makes any sense. Hello. I have some happy mail that I figured I would add into this hodgepodge of a video. This is from Blue Coffee Bear, a shop that's new to me. And so I grabbed a few of their sticker sheets. Aw, that's a freebie. I didn't order that. That's sweet. Let's see. Oh, look at those little bears. So cute. I grabbed some coffee stickers. And let's see. So I grabbed some weekend and today stickers, some coffee stickers, and these little bears right here. And this was a freebie. So that's sweet. And it looks like their reward system is set up to where if you collect 15 coffee cups, you can get 3 free sticker sheets. So that's cool. I'll keep that. All right, so here we go for that. And then this is the Coffee Monsters Co. anniversary sale purchase that I made. I was pretty proud of myself because usually, I'm sorry if this is not somebody's favorite. Let me just get it all out and then I'll come back. Okay, so I did pick up the tote bag because I love this message and it's just super cute. It comes with this pocket on the back and some pin loops, and it looks like there's a zipper pouch on the inside, so that's pretty cool. I'm probably going to take this with me to a conference, and if anybody notices it, they will immediately know that we are going to be best friends. So, I also, I was trying to say before I was like, let me just stop. I was proud of myself because I didn't purchase a lot. What I usually do is I go through and add everything that I possibly want from the shop to my cart. I look at that and I'm like, okay, my wallet and my budget do not match my cart here. So then I start eliminating until I get into the neighborhood of sanity. And then, then I check out. So I did order 2 of these, like little post-it notes that are they fit inside the Hobonichi columns of the Han and like the cousin. And she made these specifically for that. Like if you have a day where you're messed up, like for example, this happened earlier this year, and I can show you how I ended up trying to fix it before these ever came along. We had a snow day, or really a snow week, and I kind of just cut down a piece of Tomoe River paper and put it over the days where I was supposed to go to work, but I didn't. And so it's okay, but like having something that just fits the column will be so cool. So I picked up 2 of those. I think it was like 2 per customer, so I picked up what I could. I grabbed the planner clips because you know where these are going. Immediately in the rings. Immediately. Or maybe since they're lobster clasp, I'll put one on my zipper on the inside of the ring and just do that so it won't fall out or anything. So this is a die cut from I think these are, I don't know which ones were die cuts and which ones were like, you purchased this much, so this is your freebie for that. But I have these. I did purchase this because 100% I do not know what I'm doing. Never do. And then this is the 2024 freebie for March, which that's super cute. She always makes like, I just love the level of detail that she has in the small illustrations. I think they're really cute. Another bean card. It looks like this one is a journey detailing how she got to where she is now in her small business. So that is that. Back to the rest of this video. Okay, so if you're still not tired of my voice yet, we're gonna continue talking about Help for the Haunted by John Searles. So I did, like I said, relate to the main character, but I didn't like that the big bad at the end was centered around a character's sexuality. I thought it was it was purposefully anti-LGBTQ+, but I don't know that the message that I'm hoping to be intended was clear. So I thought the ending was kind of a letdown in that specific plot line, but I did find that the characters were really layered and nuanced and well-rounded to me. It felt like every character had something they weren't really sharing with everybody else, and so I liked that aspect of feeling like you really didn't know anyone very well. And then the last book is All We Ever Wanted by Emily Giffin. This was the second book that I picked from my Goodreads TBR. Apparently, I wanted to read this one so badly that I marked it twice on my Goodreads TBR. And I think it's because it's described as like a book about the Nashville elite circles, and I grew up outside of Nashville, so I was like thinking it would be an interesting read. And so if you've ever read any Emily Giffin story, usually it's about somebody who's like just really unlikable. I've never read a story from her that I really thought the characters were people that I would enjoy spending time with outside of the novel. And this was kind of more of the same, and it wasn't anything that I was like, that was amazing, like every character was really, I guess if the message was that, class and privilege are ruining our society, I feel like maybe that was a part of it. I don't know. I just felt like because these people were rich, I didn't just feel like it. It was part of the book that because these people were rich, they got away with stuff that people who had less money would never have gotten away with. So, and it's not like it was one of those kinds of books where we're suspending disbelief and this is just how we're going to go. It was very conscious about class in that book, but I don't know. I just kind of was like, the ending was just kind of like okay. So, those are all of the books that I've read this year. For better or for worse, I am currently working on reading The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt And Among the 10,000 Things by Julia Pierpont, that is another book that was on my Goodreads TBR. And so far, these characters aren't likable either. It's one of those ones where this woman finds her husband cheating on her, and the way she finds out is pretty devastating because her children find out before her. Well, they don't find out before her, but it's like she's explicitly told the information through a package that her children find before she finds it. And so it gets really messy really quickly, and then you start seeing things from their different points of view as they reflect over their marriage. And I think it would work better in print. I'm listening to it on audio, and because the timelines are so interwoven and fluid, it does get a little confusing to me, because you'll be hearing things from the husband's point of view, and he's talking about the girl, but then you find out that the girl he's talking about is his wife in the present. Like, he's reflecting back on past interactions he's had with his current wife, because he cheated on his first wife with his current wife. So that's that book. The Goldfinch is one of the ones that I'm taking forever to read. Let me see if I can go into my Goodreads and see how long. I feel like I've been reading this book for a hot minute, and it's not that it's not interesting. I feel like I know it's supposed to be like literary fiction, and it takes its time telling the story that it wants to tell. And I understand that. But it's either I'm not in the right headspace for it, or it's just like I feel like we're going too far around the bushes that we need to get through, if that makes any sense. So yeah, I've started reading this on March the 23rd. It's almost been a month, and that's pretty rare for me. But that's pretty much where I'm at with my reading. I have changed my philosophy or attack on reading to mean any and all books that I read this year. I talked a little bit about this in videos last year of like how I had this self-imposed restriction that I couldn't mark a picture book or a graphic novel as a book that I had read, because I felt like the length and the target audience it felt like it wasn't a book. But now I'm kind of to the point now where I'm like, a book is a book is a book. And if I'm recommending the books that I am choosing not to mark as a book on my Goodreads to my patrons, feels a little hypocritical, because I'm saying, hey, this book is worth your time to read to your child, but I'm not going to consider it worth my time to mark as a book that, I don't know. That's neither here nor there. I did want to say that I had somebody talk about how they were excited to hear my take on the Folk of the Air series. So this is another thing I've talked a little bit about on the channel, is that Holly Black is one of my favorite writers. I started reading Holly Black when the Spiderwick Chronicles came out when I was a kid, so I feel like I've grown up with her. Not with her, but I've grown up with her books as like they've come alongside me, I guess. Like I said in a previous video that I feel like she's my like literary fairy godmother. Like I feel like she just always knows what I need. And so Folk of the Air was, I found The Cruel Prince as an audiobook when I was traveling from North Carolina to Mississippi. And so that's like a 9-hour drive, I think. I can't remember. It's very long. I think maybe 12-hour drive. I'm not sure. But I was trying to find something to listen to because all my podcasts were, caught up on, and it was 2016, and I was just trying to, I think it was 2016, or what is it, 2017? It must have been 2017, actually, is when I found it. So I checked it out from the Libby app on my phone. And when I tell you, I was so I felt like I don't even remember that drive. I just remember the book because it felt like I was in my own world inside my car, and it just like, do you ever see in movies where somebody's reading and like the book explodes out and like they're watching it and play out in front of them? And it felt like that. The series just means so much to me because it came at a point where I feel like I was in a transition period in my life, and that was something familiar I could hold on to. And I really love Holly Black's writing because she doesn't take herself too seriously. I feel like a lot of high fantasy stories about, the fae or fairies, it's going to be pretty serious because they're considered really ruthless beings and all that. They'll steal your kids, make them changelings, etc., etc. And even like the adult fiction stories about the fae now, like you have A Court of Thorns and Roses, that whole series, that still takes itself pretty seriously. Like, there are moments of humor, but there's some pretty serious actions going down. And I will say there's still serious stuff happening in the Folk of the Air series. Like, I'm not diminishing any of that, but I feel like I feel like it's the literary equivalent of when you turn to your humor to explain all your trauma. Like, that's how we cope, or at least that's how I cope, of like making pithy jokes. Like, I just feel like that's the books in a weird way. And I appreciate Jude's anger. Like, I love an angry female protagonist, and she is angry from the beginning, and she stays angry until the very end, and that's just part of her character. And one of my friends actually had recently reread it because she read The Cruel Prince and found it okay, but like it didn't hit her like it hit me, which I wasn't expecting it to. But she read The Book of Night from Holly Black and really liked it. I think there's a lot here about family dynamics too, because you find out in one of the first chapters is that the main character is a human in fairyland because her mother faked her death to escape fairyland, and her mother's first husband finally found out that she was still alive, came to the human world and killed her. And so he abducted the main character back into fairyland and like took her in as his own. And it's like this really twisted family dynamic that is so nuanced, and it's like, how do you love somebody who is the reason for all your pain, kind of thing. And it gets deep. But I just feel like people be sleeping on Folk of the Air because it's YA or because it doesn't have all the steamy scenes, and I'm okay with that. Like, I don't need sex to be like a fifth of the book, and I feel like a lot of A Court of Thorns and Roses is like just sex, and that's fine and dandy and all. I'm not yucking anybody's yum, but I like the story development, the character development, and how you finally realize at the end of the series that everything that the characters are saying is like, it's hiding who they really are. So like, they say one thing, but they're really meaning something else. And it's kind of like a double speak situation. And I just really, I love the characters. I like Carden. I like how unlikable some of the characters are, because it makes for a good villain. And even the villains who are likable, I feel like it plays with my emotion at just the right levels, that it's never going to be something that I'm going to not enjoy when I go back and reread it. So that's kind of like my brain dump about that series. I feel like I should journal about it, but I want to reread them. And I have been holding off on rereading them because I'm afraid it's not going to hit the same. And that's a whole nother can of worms. But the rest of my, the books that I want to get through this year are a lot of series, actually. Like, I want to finish the Beartown series from Frederick Bachman. If you've never read any of his writing, I highly recommend it. It's really, really, really great. And I haven't read the third one. I've read Beartown and Us Against You, but I just haven't read the winners. I want to finish the All Souls series. I've read the first two, haven't read the third or the prequel. The Mortal Instruments series, the Throne of Glass series, Hunger Games series. I never read that because it was like I was hungover from the Twilight hype and I couldn't handle another hype in my bandwidth. And I feel like when Twilight was kind of well established, Hunger Games grew up out of that. And then, I don't know, I associate the two time periods very closely together, and I feel like that's why I never got into the Hunger Games. I've seen the movies. I just never managed to pick the books up. I also want to read Crime and Punishment and Little Women and the Brothers Karamazov as like the classics that I want to get through this year, because I started reading Crime and Punishment in like senior year of high school and definitely didn't finish it, so I want to go ahead and get that finished. I've never really read the actual text of Little Women. I've read the abridged texts for children, so I know what Little Women is about. I've watched the movie adaptations, but I think it's high time that I get to a point where I actually read the actual book. And then the Brothers Karamazov, I just kind of want to get it out of the way. I don't know. It's very intimidating. That book is like 800 pages. Like, I don't know. But we'll see. I also want to read the Crescent City series, the Divine Rivals duology, the Book of Night by Holly Black. And I have a bunch of Janet Ivanovich standalones that I want to read that have been sitting on my shelves for years. So yeah, that's kind of like a little glimpse at like what I'm trying to read this year. We'll see. I didn't get through my 2023 books I wanted to read last year. So like half of that list is left over from last year that I wanted to get to. I don't know. I feel like I just get sidetracked by other things, and I feel like there's a psychological part of my brain that's like, I want to save these for good moments, but how can I know a moment's good until after it's gone? We're getting very existential here, not the point. Like, I need to bite the bullet and just read them. So that's kind of where I'm at in my reading life, and I hope you all enjoyed this very long-winded video and that you got some journaling done or some planning done while spending some time with me. And if you've made it this far and you're not subscribed to my channel, I hope you'll consider subscribing and giving this video a thumbs up. And I thank y'all so much again for being here. I really appreciate you watching my videos and speaking with me in the comments. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.